Go to him.
So, bien, bonjour.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being so patient and for being here. I'd like to begin by thanking Gernot and the Austrian presidency. I'd like to wish them all the best, but I'd also like to thank them for having given us the opportunity at the beginning of their presidency to have a General Affairs Council meeting. It was a long meeting, a very intense meeting, but a very useful one for both my team and myself. Everyone had the opportunity to share their analysis, their ideas, to put questions. I often say, ladies and gentlemen, that the unity of the 27 that Gernot just referred to, unity that was confirmed today, isn't a God-given. It's a unity that is achieved by listening to each other, by listening to the institutions, to the European Parliament, as well as the Council. And for my team and myself, there is a degree of transparency and objectivity that we are going to continue applying, listening to each and every member state. So thank you very much, Austrian presidency and Gernot, for having taken this initiative. And as I said, I'd like to wish you all the best for the Austrian presidency, because you're taking over the presidency at a key moment, because it is during the Austrian presidency that we will have to reach an agreement on this negotiations with the UK, agreement on the withdrawal agreement, as well as the political declaration. There are 13 weeks left. Our aim at the moment, our main aim is to continue and conclude on the withdrawal agreement. As you know, what is in green is agreed, so 8% has already been agreed with the British. And then in parallel to this, we also once we finalise this agreement, need to work with the UK to come up with a joint political declaration on the future relationship. Now, this morning, as Gernot requested, I shared our analysis with the 27 ministers, this at the end of a new week of negotiations, and in the light of the discussions that we had yesterday with the new Brexit minister, Dominic Raab. I had a very useful and very cordial meeting with him yesterday. And as you know, a few days ago we received the UK's white paper on the future relationship. As you know, this white paper is the result of a very intense internal debate in the United Kingdom, a debate that was necessary. And I think we've all seen that this debate in the UK is not over yet. As I said to the ministers, there are several elements in this white paper that does open the way to a constructive discussion leading to the political declaration on our future relationship. Let me quote a few of the positive elements. The proposal for a free trade agreement, which will be at the very heart of our future economic relations. Now, basically, we have a key proposal there, that this was part of the Council guidelines, namely that we need an ambitious free trade agreement. The second element, commitments to a level playing field, especially as regards state aid and the rules on employment and environment. And thirdly, a broad convergence on the need in fact, the absolute need to cooperate on both internal and external security. And on this point, what is actually very important and positive in the UK White Paper is the guarantees that are going to be provided for defending fundamental rights and the recognition of the role to be played by the European Court of Justice as sole arbiter. And why is that important? Because this breakthrough with the support of the UK and the European Court of Human Rights means that the exchange of data will be made easier between the UK and us, whilst protecting the fundamental rights of citizens. So this opens up the possibility of us extending our offer on internal security cooperation in particular. As to the future economic partnership, the White Paper has raised three series of issues which I put forward, and we have questions that we have put to the UK, and we await answers. Firstly, the white paper proposals. We need to see if they are compatible with the principles set out by the 27 heads of government and state at the European Council meeting in March. In fact, even before March, when the negotiations began in June 2016. These are principles that were reiterated by the foreign ministers today. Integrity of the single market and the customs union, the indivisibility of the four freedoms, and the respect of the autonomy of the EU decision-making of the 27 member states. These are three key elements that were in the mandate of the European Council, in my mandate, and I will be scrupulously respecting them right through to the end. Of course, our main aim is to protect the EU's single market, to protect what we are at this moment in time. Let me give you one example. The UK says that they are willing to align itself on the EU standards for goods, but only for goods that are checked at the border. The UK, consequently, would not align itself to our agro-food rules as regards GMOs or pesticides, because the respect of these rules is not checked at the border. And this was in fact confirmed to us this week in the negotiations. So how can we protect consumers in Europe? We have a duty of care to protect consumers in the single market. And on which basis could we accept a free circulation of goods? So that is a question that we have put to the UK. A second question. Are these white paper proposals workable? Are they applicable without any additional complexity or additional bureaucracy? For example, the regulatory alignment on goods, and furthermore on what the facilitated customs arrangements as proposed by the UK. As you will have seen, these proposals would mean two tariffs would be applied, either the UK tariff or the Union tariff, or goods that are going to go to the UK market, or whether they are to go to the European market, respectively. So this creates practical problems. For example, how can the customs services verify the final destination of the goods so as to choose the correct tariff, so as to ensure that they apply the correct tariff? Is there not a major risk of fraud? What would be the financial and administrative extra costs be for businesses given this new dual system? Now, Brexit cannot and will not justify additional bureaucracy. What would the impact be if the UK has tariffs lower than the EU tariffs? What impact would it have on the finances of the member states? And such a complex system would also raise a much more fundamental question. How could the EU delegate the application of EU tariffs to a country that is no longer a member state, that is no longer subject to our rules of governance? And is it possible? Is it legally feasible? And then a third set of questions we put to the UK. Are the British proposals in the interests of the EU? As we said, our aim is to protect the interests of the EU in these negotiations. Well, by definition, the common rule book for goods would not only cover services, because the UK wants to be free to diverge on the rules for services. Now, as you know, in any product that we have, take this, your telephone, between 20 and 40% of the value of this good is linked to services. So how will we avoid unfair competition via the services? Because the UK would be free to diverge on the services. So how can we avoid unfair competition vis-à-vis EU companies? How could an autonomous British trade independence be feasible? How can we allow that? How can we avoid UK companies having a significant competitive edge vis-à-vis the EU companies? So these are the sort of questions that I put to the UK delegation
today with Dominic Raab. And we will continue this discussion and look constructively at the answers we will get to our questions. But our main focus must be and will be the finalization of the withdrawal agreement. Let me recall that the withdrawal agreement is the prerequisite for an orderly withdrawal, also for the transition period, and for creating the trust that we need to build a solid partnership for the future. This requires, in particular, as you mentioned, Gernot, a legally operative backstop, an all-weather insurance policy to address the issues of Ireland and Northern Ireland, and all 27 member states insist on this. Why? Because we are committed to protecting Ireland and Northern Ireland against the consequences of Brexit and to preserve the Good Friday Agreement in all its dimensions. I said this on my last visit in Ireland and Northern Ireland a few weeks ago, where I engaged with stakeholders across both communities. Let me simply recall the commitment taken by Prime Minister Theresa May to have a backstop in her letter to President Tusk in March, and the respect of this commitment is essential. And I made clear yesterday to Dominic Raab that we are not asking for a border between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK. What we need is checks on goods, because the UK wants to leave the single market, the customs union, and our common commercial policy. We cannot afford to lose time on this issue, and this is why we have invited the UK to work on the backstop next week. We are open to any solutions, as long as they are workable and can be transformed into a legally operative text in time for the withdrawal agreement. Ladies and gentlemen, even if we want to reach a deal, it is also our responsibility to be prepared for all scenarios, including a no deal. As the European Council said, we have to step up preparation at all levels for all scenarios. And the communication adopted yesterday by the Commission should be read in this context. We are encouraging national administrations and companies to use the time we have, which is short, very short, to accelerate this preparation. Finalement, mesdames et messieurs, nous devons...
Finally, ladies and gentlemen, we need to find an agreement on all the outstanding issues in the withdrawal agreement. This, of course, includes the issue of Ireland and Northern Ireland. That's the most serious issue, but also the British military bases in Cyprus and, obviously, Gibraltar. Now, each of these issues is important, and we need to have an agreement on each and every one of these issues. Agreement on them is necessary prior to us adopting a withdrawal agreement. They are necessary. With the UK, we need to also draw up the joint political declaration on our future relationship, this by October. Now, at this stage in the negotiations, we don't have many weeks left, but it's not a matter of needing more time. It's a matter of choosing the right decisions and being absolutely clear, because after all, we are creating an international legal treaty, so we need legal certainty and legal clarity. So the earlier we can achieve this certainty and clarity, the earlier we can start discussions on our future partnership. We want this to be as ambitious as possible, not only on trade and on the economic front, but on other areas of common interest, and also so that we can have a strategic partnership. which would have an internal security aspect to it, as well as a foreign policy